Hi, everybody. It's Angelo Caruso. I'm joined today by Brandon Voss, who is the son of Chris Voss. And getting dinner with these two guys has just become a lot harder to do because of a book called Never Split the Difference. How are you, Brandon?
I'm doing fantastic, Michael. Thank you for having me on, man.
Your dad is the belle of the ball, man. I haven't heard a book make this much of a splash in a long, long time. You must be enjoying all the attention.
He's quite the popular individual these days. Yeah, and rightfully so. He wrote, put together a pretty good book.
And it doesn't hurt that his CV is amazing. He's the former top hostage negotiator for the FBI for over 20 years, yeah?
He was, yes. Yeah, he was. Yep, did a lot of work, did a lot of good things for our country.
So the book is called Never Split the Difference, and it's negotiating as if your life depended on it. What I like about the book is it's this very popular story and then lesson format. So he tells a lot of stories from his travels as an FBI hostage negotiator, and then he illustrates how you can use his lessons in your everyday life, which we're going to get into in just a few minutes. I understand that you run the company for him now. Is that true? Black Swan Limited?
Yeah. Well, we've actually for all intents and purposes, we started the company together. We've been
Okay.
working on this as a two-man endeavor since the very beginning, and I got to admit, I'm a lucky person to be in the position that I'm in.
Is it that he started a two-man endeavor because the FBI works in pairs?
Well, that's part of it. The other part of it was, when he first got out of the bureau, he went to Harvard to get his master's.
Hmm.
And while he was there, we got the business started on paper, but he was still in school. And I was still in college at the time too. It's kind of interesting. We're going to school about the same time. And they liked him so much at Harvard that they brought him back the following year as a professor. So like the first year and a half that the business we were actually doing business, we weren't, we didn't have a lot of clients because he was busy with what he was doing at Harvard and I was finishing up my schooling. And then in 2010, first big contract fell out of the sky and he says, hey, I'm going to need some help on this. I'm for all intents and purposes, I'm a one-man show. And I came on board and been with him ever since. So
Fantastic.
it's been a good ride.
And I'm so glad you're with us today because you're going to share not only some lessons from the book, but also some practical tips that our listeners and viewers can put to work in their lives and in their businesses. I love the book, and it made me fire on so many cylinders because, like most people, I'm involved in negotiations. I wouldn't call them high level, like, life and death, like hostage situations, but your dad is right. There's so much overlap. Is that because we're talking about human nature and basic fundamentals like communication and psychology?
That's a huge, huge part of it. And I think we get a general misconception of hostage negotiations because of what we see on TV.
Yeah, we get a lot of misconceptions because of what we see on TV.
Yeah, that's the truth, right? You can apply that idea to a lot of things. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I mean, it's exactly what you said. I mean, it's all about, it's conversations of influence with people that are human beings, that have human emotions, that may be, something that's hard for you to relate to because you've experienced life differently than they have, right? You didn't grow up in a country where kidnapping was a business and you started to see how to do it when you were old enough to talk, right? And so, but it's the application of emotional intelligence.
Yeah,
What they
yeah.
talk about in so many studies today, that success and emotional intelligence are so closely linked. That's all it is. It's the application of emotional intelligence in an extreme environment.
Let's talk about it, and maybe we'll get you to tell a couple stories from the road as well. Um, I love this emotional component. You call it emotional intelligence just now, the great Daniel Goleman's work.
Yep.
And your dad has referred to this as this idea as emotional chess. A negotiation is emotional chess. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. I love it when hearing those two words together. It occurs to me, Brandon, that most people don't know how to play chess. Most people know how to play checkers.
Yep.
In
Yep.
some ways, a dummy version of chess, right? Do we find that's true in negotiation, that the average person isn't really paying attention or doesn't really know the advanced moves?
Well, I don't know if they don't necessarily, it's not that people don't know the advanced moves, but going back to this emotional side, and when you go into a negotiation and having your own agenda,
Yeah.
you know, we get so caught up in our own agenda that our ability to communicate effectively falls by the wayside because we're so intent on getting our point across. And that's when negotiations become arguments.
It's the heat of the moment, right?
Yeah, heat of the moment. That's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
And your dad says in the book that deadlines, which are, some people think, part and parcel to negotiation, deadlines actually turn up the heat. So
They do.
The closer you get to actually striking a deal, the higher the emotions run, the more stupid stuff we say, the more mistakes we make. So even if we know what to do, again, it's that brain stem. The caveman part of the brain kicks in.
Yep.
We stop thinking strategically and we start falling into quicksand. So that's why I think this lesson is always worth reviewing. Let's talk about time and timing, because
Sure.
by slowing down time, as your dad suggests in the book, by slowing down time, we make fewer mistakes. I was watching your dad in a few interviews, and he, I don't know if he's like this in normal life, but in the interviews, he was not quick. And I say this as a compliment. He was not quick to respond. He was not quick on the uptake. He was, his tones were very slow and measured. Is he like that all the time?
I think as long as he's not angry with me, probably, probably
Yeah.
so.
And that's the way to negotiate too. Yeah, he says, take your time. One piece of advice, he says, say no slowly. Say no in pieces, if you will. There were plenty of stories about this from the road. Can you think of an anecdote or a story that illustrates time and how it played into a hostage negotiation?
That's a really good question. There isn't a specific story outside of some of the specifics in the book that I can think of, but as far as like a common tactic, like something that always blew me away, and it had to do with dealing with time and emotion at the same time, but when they would talk about when they would hang up on the hostage taker.
Oh yeah.
And that's just nuts to think about, but using that tactic, and I think and I can't remember the name of the gentleman that he basically learned that from, right? The veteran savvy agent that taught him this whole idea. But I remember him telling a story about the first time he saw it, and everybody just kind of looking around like, what, did you just hang up on this guy? Like, you got to be insane. And the gentleman, his name escapes me at the moment, just kind of looked at everyone in the room and said, he'll call back. And about 2 seconds after he said that, sure enough, phone starts ringing. Terrorist is on the other end, ready to talk again.
Well, hanging up is one of the the most abrupt and obvious ways to slow things down, right?
It is, yeah. It very, very much is. And it has something to do with conditioning. Just like in any negotiation, some of your process that's involved is what are you willing to tolerate?
That's right.
So conditioning them for the conversation that you're going to have.
The great Herb Cohen wrote a book about negotiation decades ago, and it was called "How to Really, Really Care, but Not That Much."
Yeah, it's a great title.
The concept of being able to walk away mentally, or even walk away as a tactic, like saying, "I've got to call you back," or "Something's just come up," or just that, not even an explanation at all, because you have something that the other person wants, which is almost always true in a hostage negotiation. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably true of any negotiation.
Yeah. Why else would he be talking to you if you didn't have something that he wanted?
That's